Hello and welcome back to another Go Ballistic transfer special, where today we're going to be talking all about Rangers. As you can see, David Friel is here once again. We can't get rid of you from the transfer
How are you,
specials just
Jonathon?
now.
I know, I'm mad for the transfers.
Absolutely, can't get enough of them. Can't get enough of them. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to say and all the latest goings on at Ibrox. But before that, we are going to head to Athens because you've been having a chat with Andy Devlin, our man who is out there just now.
Yeah, Andy's out there covering the game, speaking to Russell Martin as well. So it's quite interesting what he had to say.
Here we go. Let's see what Andy had to say.
Andy, thanks for joining us from Athens. How's things over in Greece? Can you kind of give us a weather report? First of all, I've heard it's a bit hot.
Well, David, it's Athens in the height of summer. It's not breaking news. It's hot. Yeah, I mean, we landed about 10:30 last night, and it was still 32 degrees. So, yeah, there's obviously the conditions that the players are going to have to adjust to and overcome. Kick-off's not till 9 o'clock local time tomorrow night, but as I say, it was still pretty hot when we landed last night. So, yeah, that's going to obviously be a factor in the match tomorrow night for sure.
We'll go on to the game in a second, Andy, but let's talk about Mikey Moore, young Tottenham Hotspur winger, only 17, I think he's 18 in a couple of weeks. Rangers, it looks as if a loan deal is very, very close. Can you just bring us up to speed on the chase for Mikey Moore?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right, it's pretty close. I think the issue Rangers had in the last 48 hours certainly was just convincing Spurs that obviously Ibrox was the right place for him to go to. Spurs, maybe up until about 48 hours ago, weren't entirely sure whether they wanted the young lad to go on loan anywhere. He's obviously so highly rated by those at White Hart Lane. So yeah, I mean, he's only 17. There's obviously there'll be a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure on him. But you just look at the testimonies about him and his ability. I mean, Ange Postecoglou, the former Celtic manager, rates him so highly. There's obviously been a lot of interest from Championship clubs in him as well. But yeah, it's certainly looking like Rangers are now in the box seat to secure his signature, which, as you rightly say, would be on a season-long loan with obviously no option to buy, because the boy has an obvious future at Tottenham Hotspur. But yeah, it's another exciting signing for the Rangers support.
He is young, Andy, and sometimes you look at a 17, 18-year-old and you think, is he ready? But everybody you speak to about Mikey Moore says that he is ready, he just needs more games. But with Rangers, with their domestic commitments, European commitments, cup commitments, he's going to get chances under Russell Martin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why, Spurs are obviously pushing him, or certainly the lad himself is wanting the move to Rangers. You obviously, Championship isn't going to give him European football. Rangers will do that. He's had some appearances last season for Spurs on their run to the Europa League final. I think 21 appearances in total. So it's not as if he hasn't played any first team football. He is, used to that environment. He's been in and around the first team for a while now. So he is one that, despite his age, as you say, 17, he will be ready to come in and play a part in the Rangers team.
It's pretty clear where Russell Martin wants to strengthen at this stage. He's already signed Jedi Gassama. He wants Mikey Moore, another winger. And also, he's very, very keen in Jesurun Rak-Sakyi from Crystal Palace, and also go-ahead Eagles winger Oliver Antman. Can you understand, given that Vaclav Černy's gone and Rangers have probably lacked wide options in the last few years, can you understand why he's gone so strong in getting reinforcements in that area?
Yeah, totally, David. I mean, it has been a real problem area for Rangers, for not just for last season, for the past couple of seasons. There has been a severe lack of creativity in the side. So yeah, I completely understand. If you actually look at it, he kind of focused primarily when he came in the defence, because that was another area where Rangers needed to sort themselves out. I still think he'll land another centre half. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think he's looking at the left back area as well, but he's kind of working his way forward. Midfield has obviously seen new arrivals as well, so he's getting further up the park, if you like. So I completely understand it has been a problem area for Rangers. As you say, Oliver Antman's another one that's been linked. I wonder if he's one that they might revisit towards the end of the season, just depending on the situation with Rak-Sakyi, as you mentioned. He's obviously one that Russell Martin has been strongly linked with, strongly admires, and I think he is one that he'd be desperate to go over the line if he could. That'll be dependent on what kind of deal Crystal Palace want to do. But yeah, as I say, a problem area for a number of years, and it had to be addressed, and that's certainly what Rangers under Russell Martin and the new regime are doing at the moment.
there's so many incomings and so many links, but obviously Rangers are also trying to kind of clear the decks a bit and get rid of squad players. Robin Propper, he left on a 4-year deal to FC20. I don't imagine he's going to be the last of this window to go, Andy, and that's a kind of side issue, but Rangers will be doing work to get some more players out as well.
Yeah, you looked at the kind of squad list at the weekend when they played Middlesbrough in the friendly. The squad's hugely bloated. There's no doubt about that. So yeah, more players will leave. You touched on Robin Propper leaving. I think Ross McCausland's very, very close to a departure as well. It'll be, Rangers being able to do deals. That's the problem they've had. They've got players here. They've tried to ship and loan. Perhaps it hasn't worked out for them. I'm thinking about Rabbi Matondo especially. I mean, these guys, Ben Davis, Kieran Dow, there are so many players that need to be moved on, but it's getting another club to take them. These guys are on exorbitant amounts of money at Rangers. They're not going to get the same money. And that's why the Robin Propper deal took so long to go through. He was in such good money at Ibrox. And at 32, he realised he wasn't going to get another big money move, if you like. So that's the problem Rangers face. But without a doubt, more players are going to leave this summer, before the end of the transfer window, that's for sure.
Just to focus on the game, Rangers trained at Auchenhowie on Tuesday morning. No Tello Asgard at the training session. That would be a blow if he misses out, as looks very likely against Panathinaikos. And also no Hamza Agamani again. He obviously missed the game against Middlesbrough at the weekend. Again, he was pretty impressive off the bench. That would be a blow for Rangers if he misses out.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Martin spoke after the game against Middlesbrough after the 2-each draw and had said that he didn't risk them against Borough because he was hoping they were going to be match fit. He didn't see the point in gambling and a friendly when Rangers had such a big European match just a few days later. If they haven't trained this morning, which clearly they haven't, we'll have to assume that they won't be taking any part tomorrow night. We're obviously due to speak to Russell Martin later on this evening when the Rangers squad touched down in Athens. So yeah, as a blow, I think, especially for the Rangers support, they've been desperate to see the fellow Asgard. He obviously spent money. He's one of the players that Rangers have spent money on this summer. And he was a hugely exciting signing when you see all the comments from the Luton Town fans. He's one that they're desperate to see. And again, somebody that I think would add creativity in the middle of the park, which again Rangers have lacked in recent seasons. So for him not to be involved, and as you say, I actually thought Hamza Eggman, when he came on in the first leg, had a bit of an impact off the bench. He's clearly not match fit, and it's the same case with Cyril Dessers. So you would expect that Danilo's probably going to have to start again, with Dessers maybe coming on for the last half hour. Rangers will hope, of course, that they've managed to get an early goal, to kill the tie off. And I think in Gassama, they've obviously got somebody who's perfectly suited to the counter-attack. And this is maybe going to be a kind of throwback to Rangers in Europe, where they sit in and it suits their style of play. They'll be able to hit Panathinaikos, who undoubtedly are going to have to try and start the game quickly.
But you don't think, on the basis of the first leg, Russell Martin clearly wanted more in the first half. Rangers did ride their luck. But I think you saw signs even before the red card that Rangers can get at them. And Joe Rothwell, he was very bullish, saying that he wants to go and try and kill the tie off. Is it a case of Russell Martin of just kind of, I don't mean being cautious, but not being too gung-ho, although, as you say, you do want that early goal?
Yeah, I think it is kind of tailor-made to the way Rangers have set themselves up in Europe in recent. They've obviously done remarkably well in Europe in recent years. And it's been with this system where they've sat in and they've been able to hit teams on the counter-attack. Just think back to the Fenerbahce game, in March. Even last season when they were in Athens to play Olympiacos had a lot of the ball, but Rangers were able to counter quickly. They got a goal. They probably deserve more on the night. What I think needs to happen, Rangers can't afford to start slowly. They have to be on it. They weren't on it in the first half against Panathinaikos. It was the same against Middlesbrough at the weekend, albeit with what you would call a second string. They need to be far more offensive. I don't think they'll go gung-ho. I don't think that'll be the tactics, especially in this heat. But an early goal certainly would kill off Panathinaikos' hopes. And I think everybody's obviously the heat will be a factor. But the game with being in the Olympic Stadium and not Panathinaikos' home ground, where Rangers played in 2008 en route to the UEFA Cup final under Walter Smith, I don't think the atmosphere is going to be as intimidating. I was here maybe 15 years ago. Motherwell played in a Champions League qualifying tie against Panathinaikos in this very stadium, and the running track they would make around the pitch. So the fans aren't that close. I don't think it's going to be as intimidating as it could have been if it was at the Panathinaikos home ground. So again, that's something that you hope would work in Rangers' favour on the night.
Andy, you've got a busy day. I'll let you go, and remember, get that factor 50 on.
There we go. That was Andy Devlin in Athens. He's going to need that factor 50, hasn't he? Brave man sitting so close to that window, by the way.
I'm just glad it's not me. I'd need more than factor 50, Jonathon.
Did he even do more than factor 50? Anyway, let's pick up. You were talking to Andy there also about Mikey Moore. That's the big name in the frame at the moment with regards to Rangers transfers. Last week I was asking you, should fans be concerned about the lack of names? We've had loads of names this week coming to the fore. Mikey Moore, the main one, looks like he could be the next man through the door. Just for what you've got to say, Post, we've been hearing from Thomas Frank today on Mikey Moore. Andy was saying earlier, Tottenham didn't even know if they wanted to let him leave, but now Thomas Frank's saying it needs to be the right option that they're exploring. Is that going to be Rangers?
Yeah, I think it looks as if it is going to be Rangers, and he's a really interesting player, a real special talent. You only have to, as Andy said, you look at Ange Postecoglou and how much he admired him as well. I remember watching him in a European game, and after it, I think it was James Maddison who, and this is his words, compared him to NEYMAR. In terms of his dribbling skills and his ability, a right-footed player who plays off the left. And I think with certain players, their development comes at different times, clearly. And Mikey Moore, 17, just about to turn 18, you would maybe think that, is he ready to go and get farmed out? But I think Spurs clearly feel his development's fast-tracked to the extent where there's no point in him coming on for 10 minutes here and there in every second Premier League game. They want him to go and play meaningful football, play football at a good level, under pressure, under scrutiny, and he's going to get that at Rangers. And yeah, look, he is by far the finished article, and I get I don't mean risk maybe not the word to use, but it's a first loan for him. He is a young player who's come in, and sometimes when you burst onto the scene, it's kind of easy to kind of make that impact, and then as time goes on, you need to back it up, you need to develop it. So I wouldn't be expecting absolute miracles from Mikey Moore immediately, but I do think he's a player who can help Rangers. I think Rangers can help him as well, and I think in a manager like Russell Martin, who's got a track record of working with young players as well, who clearly knows the player pretty well, I think it's a good fit.
Chris Boyd was obviously talking on Go Ballistic on Monday. Go Ballistic now back every week here on the YouTube channel. He was talking about that risk of bringing in somebody so young and relatively untested, and he will be playing, as you said. Do you agree with that in any way?
I think there's probably stats that show that players, even top players down the line, you look at Harry Kane, for example, to kind of keep the Spurs thing going. It took him 2 or 3 loans before he really went back to Spurs to make an impact. You look at, Rangers in recent history, you look at Amad Diallo, who's now a star for Man United, but when he came to Rangers, there was bursts, there was flourishes, but probably wasn't 100% ready to be a first-team regular. Time will tell in terms of Mikey Moore. I think there's always, for that first loan move at that age, I think there's always uncertainty just in terms of how much of an impact he's going to make, how quickly he can adapt. However, I think if you're at his level in terms of potential, in terms of clearly Spurs have high hopes for him down the line. Thomas Frank, again, another manager who's seen a lot of young players, who's developed a lot of young players, it's clearly to look at him and thinking, you're almost ready, you're just not quite ready, but you need to find the right environment to go and move out. And I think it probably speaks volumes for what Russell Martin is trying to build and his project, his vision, all that sort of stuff, that Rangers can go and attract a player of this ilk, really, and this potential, because it looks as if it's very, very close. But for Rangers to even be in the conversation in terms of the platform they can give Mikey Moore, I think it's a good sign for things to come for Rangers.
Now, Moore is going to come into play. We know that. There's no way that Tottenham are going to let him go to be a bit part player, as you've been saying. So where do you think that leaves somebody like Finlay Curtis? Obviously, a similar age. He's kind of burst onto the scene a bit in the early part of this season, scored again at the friendly at the weekend. Does it send a bad message out to the youngsters already there, or is it just a case, as you kind of said there, this guy, Mikey Moore, is so far ahead in that development despite being, is it just a better player at the end of the day?
I think there's always a couple of tracks that each club will go down, right? So Rangers clearly have high hopes for guys like Finlay Curtis and Josh Gentles. They'll have a development plan for them. That might include first team football, it might include going out on loan, it might include staying for 6 months to then go out on loan. But I think Rangers also have a responsibility for the fans to get the best team they possibly can on the pitch. Now, we always have had this kind of debate with the old firm teams. You remember Rangers have brought guys in like Amad Diallo, and people say, why is there not an academy kid? Remember when Celtic brought in Jason Denayer, Patrick Roberts, people are saying, why is there not an academy kid? There will be academy kids, but they might, as you say, the player that you can get is probably just a little bit better. If Mikey Moore was available in the open market right now, and Spurs were going to sell him, you'd have a host of championship clubs lining up, maybe even lower Premier League clubs, to spend a fortune on him. So I think Rangers will have this plan for guys like Finlay Curtis. And look, it might come the end of the window, they might think he'd benefit from 25 games, 30 games out on loan. But I think they also have that responsibility to go and get the best players they possibly can. And if they think they've got a sniff of getting someone like Mikey Moore, I think you just need to take it.
Well, obviously, as you mentioned, Spurs rate him highly. He'll probably get a new deal with Tottenham. Thomas and Frank clearly views him as a player for the long term there. So this will be a straight loan. Rangers will get him for this season, and likely that'll be that when the season comes and goes. That'll be the third sort of straight loan player Rangers will have signed this window. Max Aarons, Nasser Djiga as well, with no option to buy those players. Also a bit dangerous seeing Rangers have success with loan players that have then gone away. Tillman, Cherny, Sima in the last 3 seasons. Does it make sense for Rangers to be doing what they're doing just now? Is it just a case they need to improve the squad that much that bringing in these loan players that they might not be able to keep any longer is what they need to do right now?
Yeah, again, I have no issue with loans, to be honest with you. I think if you use it as a kind of loan to buy, I think it works. But again, it comes back to what I just said about making it. You need to get the best possible team you can. And I go back to what Andrew Kavanagh and Parag Maratha said right at the start when they took over and they did their media conference. They spoke about it being a long-term plan, a long-term strategy, but they also, both of them used the word impatient. They want success. They feel that they can mount a challenge. They might not, they'll say, look, it might take a bit of time, but they will surely feel that they have the players and they can build a squad in the short term to go and mount a challenge to Celtic for that title this season. They have to think that way. They have to operate that way. So I think you'll see players signed at Rangers, guys like Tello Asgard. Joe Rothwell's a little bit older, but it's clearly a player that Rangers want to kind of not build a midfielder in, but be a key player for the next 2 or 3 years. And I think, look at Emmanuel Fernandez as well as another one. Jedi Gassama. They're guys that have been signed for the long term, but I think you always have to look at the best possible players you can get. And if that means loans, every club, a lot of clubs, even the top English clubs take in loans at times. If that means that gives you a better chance of winning silverware and challenging for the league, I think you just have to take it. So I've got no issue with loans. I get it that people say, oh, you look at Vaclav Cherny and he goes and Abdallah Seaman's won before, but if Rangers had won trophies that year and won the league, would anybody be moan about it? I just think you take the best possible players you can get, and Rangers are using both the permanent market and the loan market to better their team, and for me it's a wise strategy.
Now, looking at the permanent market, mentioned just after we picked up from Andy, a few names have kind of come to the fore since we last spoke last week. Oliver Antman, the go-ahead Eagles winger, Finland international, is kind of the other name that's broke in the last couple of days. It's in the mix. Sort of £5 million rated player. Rangers fans seem pretty excited at the prospect of this one. Very productive player. Yeah. What do we know about him and what's kind of going on here?
He's got a really interesting background, good experience. Has been playing really, really well in Holland. Has taken a bit of a kind of, I don't mean a strange route, but he's a couple of knockbacks in his career at times. He's gone for moves. He's another kind of product almost of the Nordsjælland, not academy, but Nordsjælland. If you look at Mohamed Diamande, Benjamin Deegan at Celtic, they're really, really good at developing players. Went to Groningen on loan. He's come back, ended up going to Go Ahead Eagles for about just over £1 million, which for Go Ahead Eagles is a lot of money. At that time, I think he was one of their record signings. And he's really done well, good experience with the Finnish national team as well. Yeah, look, again, he's a player who I think it would be a shrewd one. That would be a permanent move as well. And that's what I'm saying. I think if Rangers can get the balance between getting these loans in that they feel can benefit the team in the short term, but then getting the long term kind of signings that you want to build your team and your squad around for the next 3 or 4 years, and that's what you need to do. And Antman ticks the box. He's also got a great name.
He does indeed. And speaking of great names, Jesurun Rak-Sakyi. Yeah. Another great name. One that's kind of been on the periphery for a wee while, keeps coming back to the fore. A SunSport exclusive story of interest initially. Kind of blurring the lines here between a loan and a permanent, because that seems to be the hold-up with this one, doesn't it? Where do you think Rangers stand with this player
just now? I think it might be one that Rangers need to be a bit patient with. I just look at the Crystal Palace stance, by all accounts, is that they are probably maybe somewhere down the line open to a loan move for him, but they would rather just sell him straight now. If the money being talked about is £10 million, I can't really see Rangers sanctioning that for Rak-Sakyi. And I don't think any of the kind of noises coming from Rangers is that they would kind of entertain that or even try to go that. So I wonder if it's a bit of wait and see with Rak-Sakyi. Clearly, Russell Martin was live on the TV basically talking about how much he admires him, how much the Rangers recruitment team admire him. They clearly want him in. And I don't think this is also dependent on the other wingers that we've spoke about. You know, Gassama's in the door. Rangers are very close to Mikey Moore. They want Antman. But I think it's just another winger that Russell Martin wants. Clearly he's wanting his team, he wants options. And I think as well, if you look at kind of modern game, the front three tends to change after an hour. You basically use 6 forwards in every game, and Rangers have got so many games. So I think Rak-Sakyi is one that Rangers have clearly targeted. I think they might need to be a bit patient with that one just to see how it pans out, what other interest comes in. If Crystal Palace do get the permanent bid, you know, he'll probably go elsewhere. But Rangers are clearly in the conversation. All the noises coming from down there is that he'd be quite keen to come to Rangers. I think he's quite excited about what Russell Martin's doing. So I would never ever rule that out. I think Rangers are right in the mix with it, but it might depend on what other clubs do.
So even if Rangers get Moore in the door, they get Antman, you would not be at all surprised to see them go back in.
No, I think he will look. I think Russell
Rak-Sakyi.
Martin will look, and I think most managers would, if you're playing that sort of formation that he does, you would want 4 strong wingers, and that's before we even talk about guys like Oscar Cortes who's still there. I think he's looking at it, and it's been quite ambitious for me that and it might even end up being 2 loans, a loan for Moore and a loan for Rak-Sakyi, but that brings us back to what we were saying about Rangers, this balancing act between this long-term strategy and this short-term fix to try and bring success.
One player, this could be his very last mention in one of these transfer specials, Robin Proper, because he finally has actually gone since we last spoke. That was becoming a bit of a saga. Rangers getting around £1.5 million back. He's off the wage bill. They'll be quite happy how this one turned out.
Yeah, look, he seemed a good guy, and that's me probably damning him with fake praise. You know, it's always that. Oh, bless him. But he did seem a really nice guy. Look, a good professional. I said it here. He was never a Rangers defender in a million years. He just wasn't a good fit. A couple of highs in the middle of a kind of very miserable season for Rangers last year. I think Rangers just had to get him out, and it was interesting that we spoke about the money last week, Jonathon, and the wages, and somebody somewhere will have to make a compromise, and FC20 to go and give a 31-year-old a 4-year deal. But it's clearly just the money he was due has clearly been spread over that period. And I do wonder, Rangers try to get rid of other guys. Andy mentioned earlier, guys like Kieran Dow, Rabi Matondo. There might have to be compromises down the line with stuff like that as well, because I would never ever criticise a footballer for asking what he's due in terms of his contract, but sometimes you need to get creative to get players out.
Just mentioned Kieran Dow there, also a really interesting one because looked dead in the water as far as his Rangers career was going. Comes back, gets name checked in the leadership group, starts the Champions League qualifier, gets praised for his performance by Russell Martin. Every chance he could be involved again this midweek in Greece. Could he actually have a future at Rangers after all, or do you think if they eventually add these players we've talked about earlier, could that kind of be it?
I think it's again a wait and see element to Rangers being successful with other signings and that sort of attack. I mean, Kieran Dow was one of those kind of players where if someone asked me right now, where he plays, I couldn't really tell you what his best position is. His best position by the looks of what he done down south and at Birmingham last year is probably in that sort of advanced midfield role. You just wonder, has he got the goals, has he got the legs to really do that? And you look at the players Russell Martin's been linked with to go and play in that area, I think they bring something a little bit different. But I think Russell Martin's also been quite clever in the sense that he's probably looked at the squad, he's probably looked at his experience, clearly knows the player from the past and thinking, I'm going to need him for these qualifiers at the very least. So I think he's maybe been quite clever to say to Kieran Dow, look, let's just see how things go, do as well as you can. I'm going to give you a pretty pivotal role, essentially for these next few weeks, and I really, really need you. Long term, do I think Kieran Dow's answer for Rangers? No, I think the last couple of years have probably just damaged his reputation with the fans because it's never really worked out, and I think he'll always start on that kind of negative point. You know, I think it's quite hard for a player. You can maybe get away with a bad 6 months or a bad year, and listen, he'll probably say if you spoke to Kieran Dow, I've not really that many chances of essentially in a prolonged run in the team. I just think he's got so much to prove and he'd have to play so well to win the fans over, that long term I don't think he's going to be the answer. But in the short term, Rangers need players probably of his experience. You say the leadership group and everything. So I think in the short term he's going to stick about, but long term I don't see him having a future.
Speaking of leaders, Conor Coady, a player that's been talked about every week on here. I think it's fair to say the longer this one goes on, the more unlikely it becomes.
Yeah.
It's not looking very likely just now.
It's
is it
not,
at all?
but it was. I would just never say never on it. I think again, we spoke earlier about moving parts with certain players Rangers are trying to bring in. It's probably the same in terms of what Leicester are going to do, and I mean the league season starts very soon down there as well. How pivotal a role. Again, it comes back to wages, it comes back to the fee, it comes back to all sorts of stuff. I would never say never, but I'd agree with you. The longer this goes on, I wonder if Rangers are starting to really look elsewhere.
Also, they got proper out the door. That money's now come in. Would you be surprised to see that money quickly go the other way to get a centre back in? Because it's quite a shortage there now when you look at it in terms of actual first team centre backs.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it has to be a priority. Obviously, Nasser Jigga come in, Manny Fernandes comes in. I think Fernandes though is certainly one. A decent fee paid on him, but clearly one for the future.
Bit of a project player still, you'd have to say.
And then obviously John Souttar, you would imagine, is the kind of senior man there just now, but getting into last year's deal, isn't he? And I talk about him potentially as well down the line. I think that is clearly an area that Rangers need to look at. Conor Coady, you just wonder if there's I don't mean a deadline set, but you just wonder if Rangers say, look, if this isn't happening by then, we really need to move on and focus on bringing someone else in. But yeah, it is quite short. Obviously, you got Leon King there as well, but it is an area where I think Rangers would 100% need to strengthen before the window shuts.
And just before we finish up, Dave, we'll touch on the goalkeeper position. Very interesting one. Jack Butland, obviously, starting that game last week, kept Rangers in that game in the first half. 2 or 3 incredible stops that kept it goalless for Rangers to then go on and win the game. He's been talking this week as well about how he wants to recover his Rangers career, get back to be that undisputed number one, wants to become a club legend. He's been saying, and he's also been saying he feels he can kind of cope in this Russell Martin system. That the footballing goalkeeper sort of thing. He thinks he can do that.
Yeah.
Given those comments, given he started the season as the number one, his performance last week, do you think Rangers will still look for a keeper, or is is Jack Butland now kind of nailed down that position again?
I think Rangers will still be looking at what's out there goalkeeper wise, but in the list of a million things that Russell Martin and the club have to do, for me it wouldn't necessarily be a priority. Look, I think in Jack Butland and Liam Kelly, Rangers have more than good enough goalkeepers of experience, stature. They'll take responsibility, leadership as well, to more than see them through. I think down the line, Russell Martin, in terms of his style of play, will probably look at someone who's maybe a bit more accustomed to that sort of, use a cliche, sweeper keeper role. However, I think Jack Butland has done himself no harm at all, clearly, with his performance in the first leg. As I said, I didn't really see Rangers clearly were looking, they've been linked to goalkeepers, clearly we're looking at that area, and probably still are, but I think you need to prioritise other areas, and that would be, for me, central defence, first and foremost, and depending what happens with Dessers and Igamani going forward, maybe a striker. Jack Butland, I've always rated him as a goalkeeper, but there's no doubt his form fell off a cliff, basically. It was really odd to see a guy who was playing at such a high level start to make real basic errors. And it wasn't just one or two, it was a real stream of them. Maybe Barry Ferguson did him a favour, taking him out. Maybe he was quite interesting to say that he used the summer to kind of reset and almost work back to basics and kind of convince himself almost again that he knew he was a goalkeeper, he just had to show it. And look, if you want someone for a point to prove, that is Jack Butland. And he's going to be, we were speaking the day before the Panathinaikos game, he's going to be absolutely huge in Greece. And again, if he delivers another big performance, then I think Russell Martin will start to think, well, he is a man for me.
Just quickly touching on that big game tomorrow night, how do you see it going? What sort of challenge awaits Rangers here? How different is it going to be to last week? And it's going to be interesting to see how Russell Martin approaches this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, the heat, we'll always talk about the heat, but I don't think it's, you speak to Andy there and he was talking about 10:30 at night and it was still over 30 degrees. It doesn't matter who you are, this early in the season, going into play in that heat is always going to be, the Panathinaikos players are clearly going to be more accustomed to it. I thought they were good in flashes. I think they can really be got at. I don't think they're a top level European team by any stretch of the imagination. I'd be very surprised if Rangers don't score. And to me, Are Panathinaikos going to score 3 or 4 goals? I'm not sure they are, but listen, we'll come back to it. It's the same in every European tie away from home. Rangers protecting a 2-0 lead. Don't lose an early goal. If Rangers get through to half time, I think they're home and host. But we'll see. But look, there's still work to be done in terms of his tactics. I wouldn't go gung-ho. I think as Andy was saying earlier, I think Rangers are pretty good playing on the counter-attack, and especially with their pace off the bench and guys like Gassama, because I would doubt he would start. I think he'll probably go with the same team pretty much that started at Ibrox. But I think as the game opens up, and it will, because Panathinaikos at some point are probably going to have to really go for it. And I think Rangers can pick them off.
Huge night ahead. Thank you once again, David.
Cheers,
for joining me
Jonathon.
here.
All good.
That's us for this one, but don't forget the Celtic transfer special will be back on Friday. Rangers one next week as well. And one-on-one, watch out for that, coming back with Derek McGregor. It's back this week as well, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And don't forget, if you want to get in touch with Chris Boyd and Go Ballistic, you can email at goballistic@thesun.co.uk. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.